Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. As a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions. I'm not here to slander anyone. Let's get started. This is part 2 of the series that I know a lot of you have been waiting for. And I figured, today is a good day to do it. I have the day off work. Truth and Transparency has apparently broken the story on one of them Farleys being involved with the Hyundai Elantra found up in Oregon wrecked. If you haven't watched her video yet, I highly suggest you go and watch it. Very interesting. In this series, though, we're connecting dots, and we are establishing real motive in the Idaho 4 case. Now, that is something I've been working on establishing for a long time. Those of you that have been with me, you know I've been working hard on that. And in this episode, we're going to take the 6 degrees of separation and we're going to eliminate about 4 of those degrees. And we're just going to start pointing out some serious facts and some serious connections in this case. Because when you start to think about the players involved, and I've mentioned for a long time about Mr. TF and Miss TR and how they are the informants in the case. But not only are they the informants in the case, a couple of things have to be assumed once you establish the fact that they're informants in the case. Number one, they have intricate knowledge of the case, or else how are they going to inform on somebody? Number two, is it likely that they informed on the correct person, or that they gave information with truth and fiction involved? Because the only way that you're going to get law enforcement to believe your information enough to the point where they're going to actually make you a confidential informant and reduce your current charges is you're going to have to give some truth along with the fiction to make it believable. So you would have to know elements of a crime that you otherwise wouldn't have known. And you're going to have to divulge some of those elements as you give up the name of the individual that you're giving up, so that it has credence with the law enforcement and they believe it to the point to where they will offer you a deal in the process. So those things have to be assumed. Once those things are assumed, then we know we've got an informant who has intricate knowledge of the facts of the case. Then we have to figure out, why does he have intricate knowledge of the facts of the case? Well, because he is actively involved in the atrocity. And we have pointed that out beyond a reasonable doubt in many videos here lately. Today we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to start connecting the dots that everybody really wants connected. So, with all that being said, let's just get into it, shall we? Okay, so to carry it further, first we have to go back to where all of this started. And you can see here's an article from September 14th, 2022, and it's discussing the fact that 2 people were charged with felony drug trafficking in Moscow, Idaho. And you can see the 2 people have been charged with it after allegedly getting caught with a pound of meth in Moscow. Now, folks, I want you to go to your cupboards, open your cupboard, and grab a pound of sugar out. That is the amount of product that these individuals had with them. That is by no means a small amount. That is what you call in Idaho. Now in California, maybe a few $1,000s. In Idaho, you're talking upwards of $16,000 worth of product. This is a major bust. And you can see who was arrested was TF, who I've mentioned a million times, and TR, who I've mentioned another million times. So that's where it all started. Then we go to October 21st, 2022. Exactly 3 weeks prior to the atrocities, where TF, for some reason, is let out of Latah County Jail, and he is supposed to be furloughed to go visit a sick relative. He does not return from his furlough, and you can see in this newspaper article, this is where the warrant is issued for his arrest for absconding from his furlough. So from October 21st on, Mr. TF is a fugitive of justice being sought by law enforcement. He should be in the jail. He's released on a very rare furlough in order to return to jail immediately after, and he doesn't. So this is the equivalent of him escaping from the jail, folks. Then, just 10 days after the atrocity, he appears in court in Spokane, Washington, in their Superior Court on 11/23/22 after being picked up in Spokane on 11/22, just 9 days after the atrocity. This is the information that I've been searching for high and low for a long time, and a lot of you that's been following me knows that. If I had the information on this arrest in Spokane on November 22nd, then I would know who he was with during the arrest, and it would absolutely complete my puzzle. But I've still not been able to locate that information. It's hidden very well, and I will not stop until I find it, though. But you can see after that arrest in Spokane that the same individual was transferred back to Latah County on December 2nd. And I've mentioned many times that with his charges transferred back to Latah County, something strange is going to start happening with TF. Because this is a case that if he contested it, should have carried on for a long period of time. And you would think he would have to contest it, because if he was convicted on trafficking like he's charged with, he would get a minimum 10 years in prison, possibly life. That is the statute by the legislature in Idaho. So what happened from December 2nd until December 19th? Well, we know that a lot of things all of a sudden heated up in the investigation of Bryan Kohberger. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're filing warrants for DoorDash. They're filing warrants for Amazon. They go to Brent Kopaka and they unalive him. And then all of a sudden, Bryan Kohberger's name is injected into the investigation, and then a reverse investigation into him in every possible way starts. And then, of course, so we go back to our map, and you can see our victims and families up here in Coeur d'Alene, where they all reside or have resided at some point. And then way down here in Moscow, we've got the victims of the atrocity, and we're trying to figure out what is the connection between the victims of the atrocity, TF and TR here, and the families up there who lived in Coeur d'Alene at one point altogether. That is a mystery. Now, when you're trying to connect people in a mystery, in a puzzle, you go to things that you can verify and things that would stick out, that would make people associate themselves to another person. And I've showed you this golden triangle around the intersection of I-90 and Highway 95, which by all measures has been designated a high-intensity drug trafficking route by the federal organizations. And then all the family members at one point had lived within a couple of miles of each other encompassing this area. So proximity says they all know each other. We have other information that obviously proves they do know each other, but is there anything else that connects them? Well, when we look into their history, we'll see that Ben Mogan has been arrested for METH before. We obviously know that Miss Hatrock has major arrests in METH, and Miss Kernodle has major arrests in METH. Even the Gonzalez family, Mr. Gonzalez's brother, has been arrested before. Dealing with METH, I believe he unalived a man over a drug deal gone bad or something of that nature. So when you tie in the proximity of everybody living together, and then you tie in the fact that they're all actively using METH, or at least close family members are, well, then the connections start to become very, very clear. So where do we go from there? Well, we go back to TR, because other things have happened since the atrocity with her. You can see a Julietta pair on probation arrested for allegedly trafficking narcotics. So no sooner did she get probation for the original drug trafficking charge than she got arrested for it again. 2 Julietta residents already on probation have been arrested for allegedly trafficking narcotics. The case began on Friday afternoon when a probation officer and a Latah County Sheriff's deputy, which, by the way, probation officers do not have to have the accompaniment of a Latah County Sheriff's deputy when they go do a home check on one of their probationers. That would absolutely use too much resources of the county sheriff's department, and it is not necessary. So the fact they went there together, they went there on a mission. And who is involved with the Latah County Sheriff's Department? Well, that is where you get the Quad Cities Drug Task Force, and that's why they were involved. They conducted a residence check on 53-year-old TR and 50-year-old MB, as we're going to refer to going forward, at their shared home on Main Street. Shared home, okay. Well, we know that TF and TR have been associates for decades. I mean, they were arrested together at their residence back in 2011 on some major charges. They were living together. They've occupied the same residence for years and years and years. So we can assume if she's immediately occupying a residence with MB here, that TF and MB are probably well-known associates. Now let's see here. What did they have? According to court documents, authorities allegedly found nearly 1.5 pounds of METH, along with Coca-Cola, pills, Mary Jane, drug paraphernalia during a search of the home. All right, now go get your bag of a pound of sugar out the cabinet and grab another one, dump half of it out. Now these folks had way more than the original charges TF and TR had. Major traffickers right here, folks. And let's see. R was arrested for drug trafficking in the fall of 2022 when she was found with 1 pound of METH in Moscow. So these guys are major players. The pair made their first appearance in Latah County 2nd District Court in Moscow on Monday. This was the original article that I found after I noticed who was in jail when I first found the informants. And then I went in the direction of TR and TF and found all their information. Yeah, I never really paid much attention to MB, even though people suggested that I should. But here nor there. Now, when we get to our 6 degrees of separation map, again, we're trying to establish TF and TR's connection to the victims. Now we've got a new player on the scene, an MB down here in Julietta. But how in the heck would that connect them to the families way up there in Coeur d'Alene? Still a question. And also, huge question, The drug ring tied to the Aryan prison gang indicted with 28 federal arrests in Washington. How do they get their narcotics that we know they trafficked into Idaho, because it says it in all their arrest warrants? How did they get their narcotics into Idaho, where the Aryan Knights of Idaho would obviously take over the operation? And what is the connection that gets them from Washington into Idaho? Still a big question, right? Okay, so we dive in a little closer to our two guys right here. TF, we know, is a member of one of the Aryan families. What about MB? Does he fit the profile? What do we know about this guy? A little research tells us a lot. First of all, MB is not MB, actually. MB changed his name somewhere, I'm figuring out, somewhere in the 90s, the early 90s, from M. Ketchka to MB. Okay, so that's an important thing to note first, is his real name. And then it reminded me to check out this article as I was researching Coeur d'Alene. I remember this little article I read, and it was from 1995, long time ago, but it's interesting. Let me read it to you. Police arrest a man after he allegedly shot at son. A 14-year-old boy sitting in a car was shot by his estranged father shortly after midnight Tuesday, according to the Kootenai County Sheriff's Department. Christopher Tucker, 48, I'm assuming this is not the actor and comedian Christopher Tucker, from the movie with the little Bruce Lee guy. But Christopher Tucker, 48, of Coeur d'Alene, was arrested on attempted murder charges after he allegedly shot at the car his son was riding in. The incident occurred when Stacy Drewer, 34, was driving on Wilbur Avenue in Dalton Gardens with Clay Tucker, 14, who was her passenger, according to the Sheriff's Department. A pickup driving in front of her suddenly stopped. The passenger jumped out. The passenger, who the victims identified as Christopher Tucker, fired several bullets at the passenger side of Drewer's car where Clay Tucker was sitting. This guy tried to shoot his son. The passenger window shattered, but no one inside the car was injured, officers reported. The suspect is divorced from Clay Tucker's mother, Marie. Christopher Tucker has had 5 arrests since January for violating civil protective orders, twice for domestic battery, and once for carrying a concealed weapon. Well, let me pause here for just a second, because what is going on with law enforcement up in Idaho? This is Coeur d'Alene. I want you to pay attention. It says the Tucker has had 5 arrests since January for violating civil protection orders. Okay, this article is in July of 1995. So from January to July, they arrested him 5 times for violating the protection orders, another 2 times for domestic battery, and once for carrying a concealed weapon. So he was arrested 8 times between January and July, and he's out on the street shooting, trying to unalive his own son. Why was he not in jail at this point? This is insane. Drewer contacted the Sheriff's Department from the Dexco Mini Mart on Government Way at 12:45 a.m. and soon after, Coeur d'Alene police located Tucker with a man and a woman in the Sanders Beach neighborhood. Arrested with Tucker were Diana M. Isbell, 27, of Post Falls, for being an accessory to a felony, and M. Ketchka, 22, of Coeur d'Alene, for a parole violation. Now, here's something you've got to note, okay? If you're arrested for a crime and you are sentenced to probation, that means you do not go to the penitentiary. You're sentenced to probation. If you complete your probation, it goes away. If you get charged or you fail to meet the obligations of your probation, then you can be sentenced to the penitentiary. Okay, but whenever you see it says a person has parole violations or any type of parole anywhere in their name, that means that that person has actually been sentenced to the penitentiary, went to the penitentiary, and was released early. They were paroled. So anytime you hear parole, that person has actually been in the penitentiary. Okay, not the county jail, but the penitentiary. So Mr. Kachka here at 22, he was violating his parole. So that means he was already in the penitentiary prior to 22 and been paroled. So since a teenager, this guy has been in the penitentiary. We can figure that out pretty easy just from this little article. And by the way, he's a resident and grew up in Coeur d'Alene. People probably that live in Coeur d'Alene probably know this guy because he's making the news at 22. Now let's take a look at his past. What kind of history does he have as far as arrests? Now, folks, I don't put in here arrests like, driving with a fictitious license, like this gentleman has about 15 different charges over the years for. I only put the major stuff. So looking at this long history, it starts in 1991. Mr. Kachka was arrested for a simple disturbing the peace. Then, about 4 months later in 1991, he was arrested again, this time on willful disobedience of process or order of court. Willful disobedience. So disturbing the peace, willful disobedience, he's kind of an ornery individual, it looks like. But then, the next year, he was arrested for 2 counts, burglary 1 and burglary 2. Both felonies, serious charges. That's probably the penitentiary time that he got that he was on probation for when the article was written in, what I say it was, 1995. So he had been released from prison on his burglary charges that he was sentenced to prison for. And then August 21st, 1995, you can see he was arrested for assault or battery on enforcement personnel. That I would ascertain that probably happened in the prison, because enforcement personnel, that could be just a police officer, but usually they put enforcement personnel when it's like a prison guard. So I imagine he assaulted a prison guard. And then in 1998, he apparently has been released from prison at this point, and he was resisting arrest and obstructing officers. So kind of a rough and rowdy guy here. Assault on enforcement personnel, resisting officers, a little bit violent. Then in 1998, we got drug paraphernalia with intent to use. Oh, and again, resisting or obstructing officers. So arrested for paraphernalia and apparently fought the cops again. Violent individual. Then in 1998, they must have released him again, because there he's got drug paraphernalia use with intent to use. Oh, again, resisting arrest. He does that every time. He failed to purchase his driver's license, so it was invalid. So, again, showing his criminal record with propensity to violence. Then again in 1998, look, that was on October 9th. Then on October 17th, just 8 days later, he's arrested for possession of a controlled substance and paraphernalia with intent to use. So they must have let him out of the jail. He immediately got some more drugs and was arrested again. And then in January of 1999, just about 3 months later, he was arrested for disturbing the peace. Imagine that. All right. And then again in January of 99, he was arrested for false impersonation. And he failed to purchase his license again. So apparently pulled over, his license was invalid, and he told the cops he was somebody else. Now, February 6th of 1999, just less than a month later, he was again pulled over for driving without privileges, and he gave false information to the officer that pulled him over, said he was somebody else. Then, the very following month in 1999, controlled substance possession felony. Okay. And then he must not have been sentenced to prison yet, because later on that year in 1999, he was again resisting arrest and obstructing officers. Somehow he's still not in prison at this point, though, because in March of 2000, he's arrested for grand theft, felony. So that's a major charge there. And then 3 months later, I'm sure before he was sentenced on that grand theft, he was charged with a felony count of witness intimidation. Witness intimidation, intimidating a witness. This guy is violent and he is serious. Witness intimidation. You don't see that charge very often. So he must have went to prison for about a decade and then was released, because you can see his next charge is in 2021. And you can see he was charged with possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver, that's METH, drug trafficking in H, 2 to 7 grams, controlled substance manufacture or deliver or possess, so that's something else. That's probably, see, A1B. He might have been manufacturing some METH. Controlled substance possession, C1, that is some type of narcotic without a prescription, and then paraphernalia as well. So the trafficking charge is a minimum 10 years. The possession manufacturing charge, that's a minimum 10 years. And this guy has an extensive criminal history. But somehow, I don't know how, in Idaho, he must have been put on probation, because, again, he was arrested with TR in March of 2024. This time, drug trafficking and METH, over 1.5 pounds. Unlawful possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. That's an automatic conviction. Controlled substance possession, paraphernalia with intent to use, controlled substance possession of Mary Jane. So let me tell you this, folks. If he was on probation for drug trafficking and all those other charges, and then he's picked up on new charges, here's what happens in the real world. In the real world, these charges he has to be convicted on, but it doesn't matter, because as soon as he's charged with them, they violate his probation and they sentence him to the penitentiary it's usually for 4 months. I mean, you usually get an automatic 4 months, and then you would face these charges. But that didn't happen to him. For some reason, they allowed him to post bond. He put up one of his houses, $100,000 bond, and he is in the monkey court now with, the monkey guys. I'll show you here in a second, but I thought this was interesting. His attorney now for this case is David Christopher Schwartz, and it says he's retained. Now, people have argued with me on this. Usually when it says retained, that means he paid for David Christopher Schwartz to be his attorney. It wasn't appointed to him. Some people say that you can have a public defender and it say retained. I don't think you can. I think that means he hired him. And it's interesting because after Ann Taylor was taken off of Kara Kernodle's case, you can see her active attorney in all of her matters now is David Christopher Schwartz. David Christopher Schwartz. Retained, as if she paid the retainer, not a public defender appointed. So I thought that was an interesting correlation there. But then, of course, you've got, Laurel and Hardy here prosecuting him. William Wolford Thompson and John Judge. So they only prosecute Bryan Kohberger. Everybody else they pretty much let go, apparently. Okay, so then we're back to this map right here. We still got the victims. What is their connection to TF and TR? Well, TF and TR connected to MB, originally known as M. Ketchka. Now, what is his connection up here to the families in Coeur d'Alene? Now, we know that he grew up in Coeur d'Alene. People who live in Coeur d'Alene probably know this guy because he seems to be pretty famous. And is he a good candidate for being a ranking member of the Aryan Knights? Because, let's face it, these guys, they come up with pounds and pounds. They don't seem like, they're affluent individuals to have, tens of thousands of dollars worth of narcotics. So that would assume that they have that connection coming from Seattle and Spokane. So I would assume that based on his violent history and the time spent in the penitentiary and the fact that he's got pounds and pounds of narcotics, I'm going to say he's the Aryan Knight connection once you get to Coeur d'Alene, because he owns a house there and he owns a house down in Julietta. Not bad for a career criminal. And then we go up to this map, right, where we've got all the family members, and they all have their ties to either arrest with METH, or their brother is arrested and unalive somebody over METH, and they all live in this golden triangle. And oh, wait a minute, who is this? Also involved in the trafficking of METH. What is that old MB? Is that Mr. Kachka? What the heck are you doing living right there, Mr. Kachka? Oh, you live how far? 800 feet from Miss Hat Rock. Oh my goodness. And y'all are both involved in the METH. You only live a mile or so from Kernodle and Mogan, who Hat Rock's married to. I would have never guessed that you were Hat Rock's neighbor guy. You find something out new every day. So when you're doing the puzzle of the 6 degrees of separation, we've eliminated at least 4 of those degrees now, because TF and TR are obviously associated with MB, who is a neighbor of all the victims' families in the case at one point, which would entail how the victims are involved in this case. So with all that being said, there's one answer that we don't have to a question we would like answered to. We've got the Aryan family over here in Seattle and Tacoma trafficking the narcotics into Spokane and then into Idaho, where the Knights pick it up and take it south. But who is the final connection? Who's the final piece of the puzzle in Spokane that connects all of this together? The only way we'll ever know is if we get the arrest records from TF right here in Spokane on November 22nd. Who was he with? And if we can find that out, that's the final connection that ties every single thing together. But there's your motive for the Mogans. I'm so far ahead of this game, it's unreal. Because when I put out a video and I start connecting dots like that, I'm way further down the line as far as the dots go. But I wanted to give you at least that much in this one, because I know you've been waiting on it. So that's part 2. Why is the Mogan angle the motive in this case? Very simple. The September 14th arrest of TF and TR. Go back and watch my previous videos and I'll show you how that one happened. Now you know who was involved and who knew who to set that one up. And that's all I'm going to say on that one. But good job to Truth and Transparency on that discovery that she made. Good work to all those other content creators out there that are working hard on this case and keeping an open mind. For those that can't keep an open mind, I don't know what to tell you. But I still have part 3 in this series. Part 3 is that one's controversial. So I'm still putting it together and trying to figure out the best way to present it without really getting Old Pavarotti hemmed up on that one. So until I do, though, please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, criticisms. Until next time, Pavarotti's out.